Namaste everyone to this live session from AVP Research Foundation. I am Dr. Uma, Senior Medical Officer and Associate Research Scientist at AVP Research Foundation. In this session, we'll see about the Ayurveda perspective about the topic, the mind and the menstrual rhythm. So I'll be sharing a PPT. So the topic here is mind and menstrual rhythm and Ayurvedic perspective. So here we are not looking at irregular periods only as a disease. We are trying to understand the menstrual rhythm from a broader perspective. How? First, Ayurveda does not separate the mind and the body because what affects the mind will affect the body, and what affects the body will affect the mind. And when you come to the context of menstruation is not just monthly bleeding. It is a rhythmic process or cycle that depends on the coordination of multiple systems in the body, which are working together, like the brain body coordination, the nervous system, the metabolism, digestion, emotional and mental stability, etc. So, when all these work in coordination, menstruation happens normally and regularly. Since this depends on this overall coordination, we call it menstrual rhythm because it is a balance of all these functions. Um, and it is also not just the bleeding every month, it is about the timing, the flow, the comfort, and the emotional balance. So, today we will see how this mind influences the menstrual rhythm. So when we move into the next slide, this is a very beautiful verse, sloka from Charaka Samhita, which says, Sharira Indriya Sattva Atma Samyogo Dhari Jivitam. So here, this is a very important shloka and very beautiful shloka from Charaka Samhita, the first chapter of Charaka Samhita, which speaks about the constituents of life and how life is formed and maintained. So this shloka, it means that life exists when there is a harmonious union of the sharira, which is the body, the physical body, the senses, the sense organs, which are called as indriyas, the mind, which is sattva, and the consciousness, which is the atma. So when these four are in balance, life is sustained or maintained. And when the harmony is disturbed, diseases begins. So Ayurveda never defines health as just the absence of diseases, but it says that life depends on the balance between the body, the senses, the mind, and the consciousness or the Atma. So if the body is disturbed or the physical body is disturbed, the health is disturbed. If the senses are disturbed, health is disturbed. If the mind is disturbed, again, health is disturbed. So even in modern definition of health, according to the World Health Organization, WHO says that health is a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of diseases. So even modern science, they agree that physical health is not just physical, but it also includes the mental, social, and emotional balance. So Ayurveda also says the same, and it is being explained in Ayurveda thousands of years ago. And now we come to the word Artava. So Artava, what is Artava? Let me briefly explain the word Artava in simple terms. In Ayurveda, the word Artava is used for the menstrual function in the women. So it represents the proper functioning of the reproductive system and the monthly menstrual flow. And so whatever affects the nourishment, the emotions, the digestion, and the circulation will eventually affect the system, the artava, and the menstrual cycle. So the uterus The uterus may be the place where the bleeding happens, but the process is not just there. It depends on the brain, the digestion, the emotion, and the overall balance in the body. So next, uh, before we understand the type of vata like prana and apana vata, we have to first understand what is vata and its significance in the menstrual cycle. So in Ayurveda, vata is one among the three doshas in the body, and vata is the principle of movements happening in the body. So it is a force of energy or which initiates and also it governs all the motions and functions happening in the body, like the nerve impulses, the breath, the heartbeat, the rhythm, the circulation, the thoughts, emotions, even elimination of waste, so on. So whenever something moves in the body, vata is involved. So menstruation itself is also a movement, a coordination, a downward flow. So vata plays a major role in the menstrual rhythm. So Ayurveda explains that menstrual flow is governed mainly by the apana vata. So apana vata is one among the five types of vata, which is present in the lower part of the body, below the umbilical region. And this vata, apana vata, governs all the functions in the in that part of the body. So this apanavata is responsible for the elimination of the urine, the feces, the reproductive functions, the menstrual flow, childbirth, etc. So whenever vata increases in the body, irregularity of all these functions will appear. And apanavata controls all the downward functions, as I said, including the menstrual flow. And it is the initiator and controller of each and every function in the body and also the menstrual cycle, etc. So next we'll see about the mind-body connection. How the mind is connected to the body and the menstrual cycle, how the mind affects the menstruation and the cycle. So Ayurveda explains the connection very beautifully. The mind influences the pranavata. So this is again another type of vata, the pranavata, which it is again one of the five types of the vata, like the apana vata. And this prana vata is mainly located in the upper part of the body, especially the head and the chest region. And this prana vata governs the higher functions such as thinking, perception, regulation, coordination, etc. And it is responsible for how we process the information, respond to situations, and maintain the inner control. So when the mind is disturbed, the prana vata becomes unstable, and this prana then influences the apana vata because the prana and apana are interrelated and they influence each other. And we know that apana is responsible for the downward movement, including the menstruation. So if the uh, mind is disturbed by excess thinking or fear, anxiety, sometimes grief or any suppressed emotions, then prana here becomes unstable. That instability moves to apana, and then the menstrual rhythm changes. This is why emotional disturbances can directly affect the cycles. In modern terms, they say that during stress, the certain stress hormones increases, especially the cortisol, and cortisol is necessary for survival in some amounts. But when stress becomes continuous, the cortisol levels remain high. And when cortisol remains elevated for a longer period, ovulation may get delayed and hormonal signals from the brain to the ovaries may be disturbed. So the cycle may start shifting. The cycle may shift and the period may be delayed or it can be skipped. So chronic stress directly affects the menstrual rhythm, and Ayurveda describes this as mental disturbance, which leads to vata aggravation, the pranavata, and then apanavata imbalance, and that leads to the irregular artava or the menstrual flow. So this is the connection between the mind and the body, and how the mind affects the body and the menstruation. So we know that it is not only stress that affects the body and the menstruation, even constant thoughts, overthinking, comparison, insecurity, overwork, grief, and also anger, envy, excessive screen time, all these could disturb the mental rhythm. So we see this very commonly in real life. Like a student during the exams may experience delayed cycles. Not only it is because of the mental stress, but also due to the late nights, irregular food habits, and disturbed routine. So all these will increase the vata and disturb the normalcy of the functions happening in the body. Also, another example, like if a woman is going through sudden grief or too much depression, may even skip period for a month, because strong emotions will directly affect the internal balance. Again, for people who are too much thinking, overthinking, and worrying, may again notice scanty flow, reduced flow during their periods, because continuous mental strain dries up and depletes them, which shows up as reduced period flow. So these are not just coincidences. They show how closely the mind and the menstrual cycles are connected. So now we'll see the role of Agni and Risa. First, we must understand the important concepts in Ayurveda called as Agni and Rasa. Agni means the digestive fire. It is not just the stomach acid, it is the heat energy and the body's ability to digest the food, absorb and transform whatever we take inside. So, when Agni is strong, nourishment happens properly. And when Agni is weak or irregular, the entire system becomes disturbed. So then mind is now the mind directly affects the Agni. So when the mind is disturbed, we can see appetite changes. Like some people overeat, and some people completely lose appetite. Some eat at irregular timings. So when digestion becomes weak, people food is not processed properly, and this leads to formation of ama. So what is ama? Ama means incompletely digested food material, something the body could not properly digest and transform, and it turns out to be toxic material to the body. So, this ama, which is a toxic material, indigested, undigested material, remains in the body and it blocks the various channels in the body. And when the channels are blocked, proper nourishment cannot reach the tissues or the dhatus. Okay, so this is ama. Now we'll go to the next part, which is the rasa. After digestion process, the first tissue, when the digestion is happening properly, after digestion, the first tissue formed in the body is the rasa or the rasa dhatu. That is, after the digestion, the nutrient part is being absorbed and moves into circulation as the rasa dhatu. And Rajas, the menstrual blood, is formed from the Rasadhatu. So, if Rasadhatu is weak, insufficient, or of poor quality, menstrual bleeding becomes irregular. So, the sequence becomes very clear. The mind disturbances will affect the Agni and it will lead to indigestion, and indigestion will lead to ama formation, the undigested food which is being stored in the body, and that leads to weak rasa dhatu, the first essence of food after digestion, and that weak rasa will lead to disturbed artava and irregularity in the menstruation, and this is the sequence and everything is interconnected. So then next we see about the mind and the sleep, how they are connected. When the mind is constantly active, when you are thinking, when you are worrying and are constantly active, sleep naturally becomes disturbed. So if a person is thinking continuously, worrying, or planning something, or always on screen, using screen for a long time, so in such cases the mind is always in active mode and it is unable to sleep, unable to shut down. So, late nights and irregular sleep will naturally increase the vata. So, in modern terms, proper sleep also increases the stress hormones like cortisol, which over time disturbs the hormones in the body. So, many women notice that after several weeks of poor sleep, their period changes. Either the timing shifts, the flow reduces, or the premenstrual symptoms like the pain, the tiredness, etc., will increase. So again, the starting point is not the uterus. It begins with the mental imbalances, with disturbed sleep, which increases the vata and the stress hormone, and that will eventually affect the menstrual rhythm. So that is the connection between the mind and the sleep, how the sleep affects the mind, etc. Now, we will see the how the menstrual irregularity is a signal. So irregular menstruation is a signal which tells us that the inner balance is disturbed. So instead of only trying to regulate bleeding with just medications, we must check like if is sleep proper, is digestion stable, is the mind calm, are the routines in a are we following a proper routine and lifestyle, etc. So the treatment here is restoring the balance. Okay, restore the balance and not just suppressing the symptoms. So if the issue is with the sleep, then we have to address the sleep issues. If the issue is with the mind, then address that primarily. So the treatment goes in that way. So here, menstrual irregularity should be considered as a signal by which we can understand that there is some imbalance happening in the body. Now, when the mind is calm, the breathing is steady, the digestion becomes stable and balanced, the sleep is proper, then the vata becomes balanced, it remains balanced, and the apana functions properly, and then the menstrual rhythm or the menstrual cycle becomes regular. So when the mind is calm, all the functions in the body happens in a proper, regulated way. So the mind is not separate from the body, and it also directly affects your menstrual health. And so everything in the happening in the body is interconnected or interrelated. Yes. So how to restore the mental balance? So, if the menstrual rhythm or cycle is disturbed due to the mental imbalance, then correction must begin at the level of the mind. So, how to restore the mental balance? The first would be like regular routines. Uh, because irregular lifestyle will increase the vata. So going to bed late, skipping meals, eating at irregular timings, all this will disturb the internal balance. So following a consistent routine will reduce the vata naturally and the mind. So simple practices like eating warm, freshly cooked food at regular timings will improve the agni, it will improve the digestion, and eventually the vata will be in balance. And the next would be like oil application. It is called as abhyanga, oil application all over the body, especially with warm oil. It will balance the vata dosha, and it also improves the circulation. It strengthens the tissues in the body, and it relaxes the nervous system and promotes better sleep. So good sleep good sleep itself will restore the hormonal balance and the mental calmness. And the next would be like some gentle yoga or some exercises, pranayama, meditation, etc. So these practices will improve the circulation in the body, the pelvic region especially, and reduce the muscular tension and calm the nervous system and brings balance of the doshas. Slow breathing also reduces the stress hormones like the cortisol. So when this inner balance return, then the body is restored, and you can expect a healthy lifestyle and also a healthy menstrual flow. So here, to conclude, menstruation is physiology which is influenced by psychology, and it is not an isolated uterine event. It does not happen only in the uterus. It is a process that depends on harmony between the body and the mind. So in Ayurveda, health is defined as the balance, that is the balance of the doshas, the proper digestion, well nourished tissues, proper elimination of the waste, and a peaceful state of mind. So the state of mind is also very important. So when this harmony exists, the rhythm, the menstrual rhythm, the whole rhythm in which the body functions comes to normal and it becomes balanced. So thank you everyone for the patient hearing. Thank you.